Oh man, hey Mike, you ready to
Hey,
you got your Chester belt buckled up?
hey. I'm Chester buckled.
All right. Well, here we go. We got a song. It's song time.
I love our song.
Big steak, cold beer, church folks, dead deer. It's all good, but I'm not done. I got Chesterton. Hallelujah, I got the red, white, and blue. You know what else? I got my lip packed with you. You know it's the best, but can you guess what's even bester, son? I got GK Chesterton. When I read Chesterton,
I put a lot of work into this.
it's like I'm in heaven. If I could have any gun, it'd be a GK-47. And if GKC was...
You're listening to another episode of Chesterton's Gateway with Ethan, Nicolle and Michael Grumbine and me, AI Chesterton. Let's hurry up and turn off this awful song.
Good dog, great kids, almighty God, but none of them stack up at number one. That's GK Chesterton. God bless America and Uncle Sam, but I pledge
It
allegiance.
gets better every week. Have you considered the fact that the bar keeps getting higher?
I know. I put a lot of work. I put a lot of work into that one, and
That's fabulous, man. I want the single is what I want.
So I have started I showed you all of these songs are going to go on our Spotify, and if you look up Chesterton's Gateway as the band, each one will be released as a single on Spotify. If you want to rock out to Chesterton songs.
You should consider opening our Chestertonians with that one. Oh
Classic.
man, that's so good. You
all
have
right.
too much talent, sir.
I didn't. I mean, I just came with the lyrics. It's not give me too much credit.
You didn't practice the singing yourself?
Yeah, I do the Chesterton. The awesome Brad Paisley. All right. Well, this week
Awesome.
we're jumping into it's the introduction to Heretics, and the title is Introductory Remarks on the Importance of Orthodoxy. And I think so. This is the next chapter in Chesterton's Gateway, and I think I did a few introductions in my Chesterton's Gateway book because they're all great introductions, believe it or not, to Chesterton.
Yet he has the best of all the writers that I've known, and like I like Chesterton's introductions more than anyone else's to their own books. Most introductions and prefaces in most books just feel like time wasted before you get to the real meat. But for Chesterton, his introductions themselves are a kind of meat. They're something to chew on. They give you something to chew on intellectually. So I love them.
Yeah, don't skip the intro on Chesterton's books.
Yep. No skipping leg day. It's leg day.
So we're going to do this in two parts because it's a bit longer. So this episode will be the first half. Next episode will be the second half. I'm trying to think if there's any other introductory, preparatory stuff, but maybe we can kind of talk about the time, what he's reacting to. What is he kind of? So this is from Heretics,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a book of he takes on a bunch of ideas, and some of them are he has a person who kind of stands for it. Like he has Rudyard Kipling. I think he's the one on making the world small.
Yes.
He has one on teetotaling. He has one on so he kind of takes on all these different concepts of his time. Is there anything?
Right. Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells, famous as the father of modern sci-fi, but also in Chesterton's time, he was more than just sci-fi. He was a commentator on man and his place in the universe, which H.G. Wells did not have very many positive things to say. He was a right pessimist, that one. So, but yeah. So Chesterton takes on bad ideas by giving them a person that really kind of speaks to those ideas. Sometimes directly, like George Bernard Shaw, who was a friend of Chesterton's.
Right.
But sometimes where he's just showing us that this person stands for this ideal. Like I don't think Kipling would would have ever said quite what Chesterton would say about his own philosophy. But sometimes you need someone to look from the outside on your philosophy to say more clearly what it's about. And Chesterton is just such a man.
Mm-hmm.
Very so. So this is his. But we're only going to hear in passing about some of these people in the introduction.
Right.
So if folks, if you like our 2 episodes on this, then go check out Heretics by G.K. Chesterton. It's in the public domain, so you can have it for free.
And that sounds awesome, right? Like a book of Chesterton taking everybody down, like one chapter at a time. And there are chapters. One thing, he isn't a violent man, so he's not like completely just demolishing them like Ben Shapiro on YouTube. But he's
there's no owning his enemies. He doesn't
owning
do that
the libs. But there's some great chapters. So he has lines. He has some zingers, right?
He does. Well, he's a master of words, but he takes things down in he's at the end of the day. He's a 19th, early 20th century writer, and he has more style than most writers nowadays. And so when he takes you down, it's kinder, less brutal. Mm-hmm. It's usually funnier.
This chapter's kind of about that, like the need for disagreeing people to have real conversations about what really matters. It's a big part of this intro. I felt like I was going to say something else, but I think I lost it. I'm not sure. Are you ready, AI Chesterton, for the 3rd episode?
Is this already 3 episodes? Man alive, I say. Man alive.
He's dropping. You're trying to get us to read his Man Alive book. It's a pretty good book.
Yeah, he's always on a PR stint, that Chesterton.
He's such a publicism whore. Okay. All right. So, and what is this one called?
Introductory Remarks on the Importance of Orthodoxy. The Introduction to Heretics, 1905.
Holy crap, that's a long time ago. All right, well, shall we begin, sir?
Please.
All right, let's go. We're diving in. Buckle your chester belts.
Nothing more strangely indicates an enormous and silent evil of modern society than the extraordinary use which is made nowadays of the word orthodox. In former days, the heretic was proud of not being a heretic. It was the kingdoms of the world, and the police, and the judges who were heretics. He was orthodox. He had no pride in having rebelled against them. They had rebelled against him. The armies with their cruel security, the kings with their cold faces, the decorous processes of state, the reasonable processes of law, all these like sheep had gone astray. The man was proud of being orthodox, was proud of being right. If he stood alone in a howling wilderness, he was more than a man. He was a church. He was the center of the universe. It was round him that the stars swung. All the tortures torn out of forgotten hells could not make him admit that he was heretical. But a few modern phrases have made him boast of it. He says with a conscious laugh, "I suppose I am very heretical," and looks round for applause. The word heresy not only means no longer being wrong, it practically means being clear-headed and courageous. The word orthodoxy not only no longer means being right, it practically means being wrong. All this can mean one thing and one thing only. It means that people care less for whether they are philosophically right. For obviously, a man ought to confess himself crazy before he confesses himself heretical. The Bohemian with a red tie ought to pique himself on his orthodoxy. The dynamiter laying a bomb ought to feel that whatever else he is, at least he is orthodox.
My favorite part of that, I feel like he just nails that the guy who's like, I suppose I'm a bit heretical myself, and then he looks around for applause. So like that, so many people they don't use the word heretical anymore. I'm trying to think of examples. Like I'm a bit of a troublemaker. I'm a little controversial. Or
I'll get canceled for this. I'm a rebel. These are the things the modern parlance would. It's a way of saying, I'm different from everyone else. I stand out from the crowd,
mm-hmm.
and then looking at the crowd for your approval, and that's, which is of course the thing that makes it funny. I suppose this is a very old. This instinct is a very old instinct, which is whatever we like to think of ourselves as unique, and so whatever
The rebels.
yeah, there's always been a charm to rebels, and that's been true. That was true. I mean, this is what caught the attention of the French revolutionaries, is the American Revolution. The idea of rebelling against what we would in the 70s and 80s call the man has always been a popular thing in the human spirit. It's caught the attention, but he's pointing out that in his time, the very specific words orthodox and heretical are when they were specific to speaking about the highest things, the things of God, theology and philosophy, the things of the metaphysics. These were words reserved for here. Someone who is right about the most important things or wrong about the most important things. That being heretical wasn't about being a rebel. It was about for the ages past. By the time of Chesterton, it had become so. He's pointing out, but it never was before. And because everyone who thinks a thing, whether that thing is what the common man thinks, what the good and the great think, what the man thinks, or whether it's just what you think, everyone thinks they're right. And so that's which is what orthodoxy really means in the end, and what heresy means the opposite of that. It's what's off. So he's pointing out that people have it's been become cool to be heretical. And that was true of the time he's writing. This was the time in which all the great systems of theological thought and philosophical thought were being taken down. It is not like, I'm a Catholic, and so the Protestant Reformation was a time, for example, when a bunch of people in Europe decided that the Catholic Church wasn't right about X, Y, and Z. But they had an opinion about X, Y, and Z. They said the Catholic Church isn't right, but we are. And they were willing, those Protestants who make much about the Inquisition, they were willing to, Queen Elizabeth I, for example, burned more Catholics at the stake than any Catholic king or queen in England ever burned Protestants or heretics at the stake. She was, so they were willing to kill people for it. In other words, these were ideas that were important, and they thought they were right. It wasn't just a matter of, everyone gets to think what they want, and applaud me because I'm taking the man down in my thought. It wasn't that at all. So Chesterton's speaking to a real sea change in thought, where now all of a sudden all those great systems of thought about the highest things, theology and philosophy, become suspect.
Now, forgive me because I may have been thinking about my question while you were answering, and I got lost thinking about it.
I have that effect on people.
When he was talking about the kingdoms of the world and the police and the judges being the heretics, is that what you were getting at?
Yeah. So if you're the
confusing to me. I'm confused by that idea.
Well, so let me take the earliest Protestant. I'll speak to English medieval history, so that's my thing. So in the late 1300s, there was a guy named John Wycliffe. He was like a first proto-Protestant. He had the idea that everyone should read the Bible and judge for themselves what the meaning of each passage was, and that priests weren't necessary. And so over 100 years before Martin Luther, he was in England saying the Catholic Church needs to go away, and we all need to become. He was a proto-Protestant, in other words. Well, but he wasn't. But when he, as a proto-Protestant, he believed that he was right and everyone else is wrong. So everyone else, being the king and the judges and the people, the Catholic Church and all the priests and all the learned scholars, they were all wrong and he was right. And that's what Chesterton's pointing out, is that a person who's a heretic doesn't think they're a heretic. They think everybody else is. They think they're the orthodox person. So if all the laws are set against them, the laws of God and man, as they've been passed down, it doesn't matter. They're right and everyone else is wrong. So no one who takes ideas seriously really thinks of themselves as a heretic. They think of themselves as orthodox and everyone else as wrong. Everyone else as the heretic.
All right. Yes, I think I get it. All right. Well, should we move on?
Please.
It is foolish, generally speaking, for a philosopher to set fire to another philosopher in Smithfield Market, because they do not agree in their theory of the universe. That was done very frequently in the last decadence of the Middle Ages. and it failed altogether in its object. But there is one thing that is infinitely more absurd and unpractical than burning a man for his philosophy. This is the habit of saying that his philosophy does not matter. And this is done universally in the 20th century, in the decadence of the great revolutionary period. General theories are everywhere contemned. The doctrine of the rights of man is dismissed with the doctrine of the fall of man. Atheism itself is too theological for us today. Revolution itself is too much of a system. Liberty itself is too much of a restraint. We will have no generalizations. Mr. Bernard Shaw has put the view in a perfect epigram. The golden rule is that there is no golden rule. We are more and more to discuss details in art, politics, literature. A man's opinion on tramcars matters. His opinion on Botticelli matters. His opinion on all things does not matter. He may turn over and explore a million objects, but he must not find that strange object, the universe. For if he does, he will have a religion and be lost. Everything matters, except everything.
Nice delivery there, AI Chesterton.
he's pretty good. He likes to put emphasis on things. Sometimes it's a little odd.
Sometimes it's weird, but he nailed that one.
That was really good. It's so excellent because it's and he's about to start on this. He's about to tell us more about this, the dismissal of general theories, but the idea that it's not cool anymore to talk about things like the doctrine of the rights of man. That's from the French Revolution. That's like their Declaration of Independence in the French Revolution, or the doctrine of original sin, the fall of man, as he says. So these things are now dismissed. So we don't care about the general truths anymore. We only care about particular truths.
Yeah, the golden rule is that there is no golden rule. Like
right.
In order to get rid of absolutes, you have to have one absolute. That's the only way.
It reminds me. I think you heard this before, probably in the Chestertonians, but I absolutely lost it in episode. Was it episode 3 of the Star Wars prequels that came out?
Oh yeah.
In the final scene, the battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker in that lava field. They're doing, I guess George Lucas's best impression of philosophy, which isn't very good, but but at one point they're yelling back and forth at each other as they fight with lightsabers, and Anakin Skywalker has said something particularly emo, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi yells at him, "Only a Sith Lord deals in absolutes," and at which point I lost it in the theater, because that statement is an absolute statement. Only a Sith Lord deals in absolutes. And everyone was pissed but me, because like nobody else is laughing in the theater, and I'm finding it very funny that Obi-Wan Kenobi has just condemned himself to being a Sith Lord, apparently. But anyway, that's the thing, is that once you say, like Mr. Bernard Shaw is, the golden rule is there is no golden rule. Well, yeah. So you've just
why say anything? Yeah.
You've just that's what Chesterton's always accused of paradoxes. That's actually a true paradox right there, which is a statement that contradicts itself. It has its internal logic makes no sense. So anyhow, I like your note in your book about Botticelli. That was pretty funny.
Oh yeah, I forgot. What is there anything good in the notes? And yes, I remember Smithfield Market is a place where people were actually burned at the stake, right? There's
Yep, in England, yep.
Any other notes on people we passed over here? Botticelli, yeah, I forgot what was my note on Botticelli.
That's the Venus de Milo, Botticelli.
Oh yeah. It's the naked lady covering her privates up with her hair.
Exactly.
That's that guy. If you don't remember, it's the Adobe
description of Botticelli I've ever heard.
It's the Adobe Illustrator
cover
artwork, used to be for graphic designer people.
All right. They took that away a while ago.
All right, let's move on.
Examples are scarcely needed of this total levity on the subject of cosmic philosophy. Examples are scarcely needed to show that whatever else we think of as affecting practical affairs, we do not think it matters whether a man is a pessimist or an optimist, a Cartesian or a Hegelian, a materialist or a spiritualist.
Okay.
Let me, however, take a random instance. At any innocent tea table, we may easily hear a man say, "Life is not worth living." We regard it as we regard the statement that it is a fine day. Nobody thinks that it can possibly have any serious effect on the man or on the world. And yet, if that utterance were really believed, the world would stand on its head. Murderers would be given medals for saving men from life. Firemen would be denounced for keeping men from death. Poisons would be used as medicines. Doctors would be called in when people were well. The Royal Humane Society would be rooted out like a horde of assassins. Yet we never speculate as to whether the conversational pessimist will strengthen or disorganize society, for we are convinced that theories do not matter.
I couldn't help but think of the Canadian MAID laws now.
MAID laws.
It's a MAID, MAID. It's a law that allows you to commit suicide.
Yeah, like even if you're just sad.
Yep. Poisons would be used as medicines, and doctors would be called in when people were well.
Yeah.
Yep. That's about right.
There was one line, Chesterton, there was one line you had really fast. Can you slow it down a little bit and read it again, just for clarity's sake? Because he went crazy there on the Cartesian Hegelian stuff.
We do not think it matters whether a man is a pessimist or an optimist, a Cartesian or a Hegelian, a materialist or a spiritualist. Let me, however, take a random instance.
Right. Then he went on to the tea table with the guy who was saying life's not worth living.
That's pretty impressive that you were able. Did it do it on the fly, or did you prepare it?
What? I just highlight text and say regenerate that and have him do another take. So he does different take because each time I generate it, he switches up a little bit. So
you were just hoping he wasn't going to speed through it again.
Yeah, he usually does. He usually doesn't do that twice in a row.
Yeah.
So a Cartesian, that's Descartes, correct?
Correct. He was the guy that he was the first break from.
Sorry, that's a guy that really likes Descartes.
Yeah, Cartesian is a follower of René Descartes, who made famous "I think, therefore I am." But he was the French philosopher. He should have stuck to math. Actually, he was an excellent mathematician. He developed the Cartesian coordinate system and calculus and other stuff. But it was when he went into philosophy that he started to go a little wild. And his whole point was we can't trust our senses because they sometimes give us misinformation about things. They make mistakes. So instead, we have to figure out what's the root philosophic principle we can build all other truth on. So I have to lock myself in a small dark room for days thinking, and then I come up with the phrase, I think, therefore I am. So I cannot deny that I am a thing that thinks. And that's the root. And so he started the rebuilding of philosophy. But once he had started on that path, a bunch of others like Hegel, the Hegelian, took a different tact based upon the idea that the senses sometimes fail, or we can't get certain knowledge from our senses. So Hegel famously inspired, with his dialectic, inspired Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the Communist Manifesto. They took a Hegelian view of the world. Hegel himself was a German who was, and his philosophy was notoriously vague and dancing in a lot of ways, where he didn't quite want to say that there was objective truth, and he didn't quite not want to say that there was objective truth. So he talked about it in a very odd way. But anyway, this is not a philosophy podcast. So anyway, Chesterton's just pointing out it used to matter what philosophic principles people took and what kind of person it made him a certain kind of person. And nowadays, being 120 years ago, as he's writing this, it matters less and less, and people don't take people seriously, even if someone makes a statement like "life is not worth living." Right. All I would say is don't make that statement in Canada nowadays.
Yeah, be careful. Be careful to hear you say that. It's pretty dark, and the numbers are pretty staggering. How many people are choosing suicide in Canada?
Right, and that's an example. Actually, it's an example of why philosophy matters. we tend to dismiss philosophy, but philosophy is how you think about the core structure of the world. And so if you really do think about the core structure of the world in a way that minimizes your own worth or the worth of other humans, then you end up making really poor decisions and living a really unhappy life, or other
Right.
people do if you choose to take it out on them. So yeah, that's philosophy matters, and I think that's what Chesterton is pointing this out.
Yeah, that's what he's trying to say here. Yeah, and that's why I feel it's so hard to have a conversation with somebody who wants to really get to the bottom of my view on something like gay marriage. You have to start with, is this world created by a creator with a purpose and a meaning? Is it something that I didn't come up with? You know what I mean? Like, it
Right.
has to start with the philosophy. It has to start there. That's the question you have to even be willing to ask. To me, that's such an important question. And it feels like that just falls on, oh my gosh, bro, like, who cares? Like, how could you not care about that? That nothing could be more important. I feel
Yeah.
Chesterton's
And
pain.
why do you think that is? Why do you think people take that attitude, of that, dismissive attitude towards whether the big things matter, whether the big ideas matter?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's to me, it's more of a mystery of why I don't think that way. Because I find people that think that way, and I'm like, oh, brothers, that's our group. But it's lonely caring about ultimate meaningful stuff. It's nice to.
I see. Yeah, I think we're really good at distracting ourselves in this society. Like, we have an
Right.
entertainment society, and so follow the shiny object is a lot easier to do than get to the root of a difficult, big reality truth. It takes a lot more mental effort. It's actually a hard thing to learn how to
Yeah.
discuss and get to the root of truth in a careful way that isn't demeaning to the subject material or the people around you. And so I think we've developed a society which is so based on the glitter and the shiny object that that they've lost the muscle tone, their
Mhm.
intellectual muscle tone to. But I think that when you propose, I'm reminded of back in the 2000s, the early aughts or in the mid aughts, when podcasting became a thing. But it wasn't a thing. It was there, and it was much mocked and derided, and people talked about it like, this is a stupid idea. Who's going to sit and just listen? This is like radio that you can't shut up, and for 3 hours. And so the idea that Joe Rogan would be successful was kind of ludicrous,
Mhm.
but he was, and podcasts were, and the reason comes from the fact that I think people do enjoy
It's true. Yeah.
exercising the intellect. They do
The
enjoy musing about higher things or more
Yeah.
important things.
I mean, the rise of Jordan Peterson
Hmm.
is definitely proof that there's a hunger out there for it.
I agree.
Yeah. So they're out there. I'm not saying I'm so unique and cool and all alone, but like, um,
You are pretty unique.
it's more.
Nobody else invented AI Chesterton, so there's that going for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be my gravestone. Um. Yeah. I don't know. I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah. Oh, I think it was. I think that the person who will bring up and have a problem with my philosophy in general will not want to go down the road. They're not interested in finding out. Like, if the topic is brought up of, like, my view of gay marriage is a gay marriage isn't marriage. You know, they just immediately have cultural blinders up to go. We don't have that conversation. We don't talk about that. We don't go that way down that road. So, uh, I think there's those obstacles. But I do think people, are fascinated. I mean, so anyway, speaking of that, let's keep going here.
Yeah, that's what's funny about that. Just one last thought is that,
Oh, sure.
which people will have to fast forward to get to it by the time our work comes out, because the next essay, not 2 episodes from now, is not this episode,
Mhm.
which is the first half of this one, nor the next, which is the second half of this one, but the third one from now is going to have a lot of relevance to that. I think people get their cultural blinders up, because it's hard dealing with the neighbor who says a thing that is that you have to contend with rather than just avoid by leaving. And so
Right.
that's his, when he talks about the
Or
family. But anyway,
simply by having a polite conversation with them, you're marking yourself as a heretic of society, like not in a bad way, like in a not a bit of a heretic
that's
looking
true.
for applause, but
That's true.
you're a heretic if you question gay marriage, right? So anything like
Right,
that.
because gay marriage is the Orthodoxy right now
Mm-hmm.
in the cultural sense. Although there have been some chinks showing up in the last few months about that, but anyway.
I was trying to get it erased, but geez, all right.
All right, Chesterton, continue on. Save us.
This was certainly not the idea of those who introduced our freedom. When the old liberals removed the gags from all the heresies, their idea was that religious and philosophical discoveries might thus be made. Their view was that cosmic truth was so important that everyone ought to bear independent testimony. The modern idea is that cosmic truth is so unimportant that it cannot matter what anyone says. The former freed inquiry as men loose a noble hound. The latter frees inquiry as men fling back into the sea a fish unfit for eating. Never has there been so little discussion about the nature of men as now, when for the first time anyone can discuss it. The old restriction meant that only the Orthodox were allowed to discuss religion. Modern liberty means that nobody is allowed to discuss it. Good taste, the last and vilest of human superstitions, has succeeded in silencing us where all the rest have failed. 60 years ago, it was bad taste to be an avowed atheist. Then came the Bradlaughites, the last religious men, the last men who cared about God, but they could not alter it. It is still bad taste to be an avowed atheist. But their agony has achieved just this, that now it is equally bad taste to be an avowed Christian. Emancipation has only locked the saint in the same tower of silence as the heresiarch. Then we talk about Lord Anglesey and the weather, and call it the complete liberty of all the creeds.
Yes, talking about Lord Anglesey and the weather. That's all I like to do.
And what do you think he means when he says, then we talk about Lord Anglesey and the weather?
I'm guessing Lord Anglesey is the, shall I say, what? The Elon Musk of, not Elon Musk as far as the political thing to talk about at the moment, right? Is that what he's talking about?
Maybe your local lord in the House of Lords.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a less known politician that was.
Yeah, but it'd be like talking
Adam
about.
Schiff. No, I don't know.
Yeah, well, Adam Schiff here, in L.A., that's for sure. Your local congressman talking about what they've been up to or what the weather's been like. Yeah, as if that's the important stuff when it isn't.
Or Trump. Yeah, everyone. It's okay to talk about Trump as long as it's negative, right?
Oh yeah, I'm really impressed that AI Chesterton got Brad Lafittes and
it's amazing at pronunciations.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So
do you want to
well
explain
done.
what the heck those things are? Brad Lights, some guy named Bradlaugh.
Yeah,
and then it's a bunch of guys. It's a bunch of guys who really like a guy named Bradlaugh.
Exactly. Basically, it was like on the cusp of when atheism, atheism was the last heresy that was allowed to exist, and in England it became the sign of culture that you could actually say by the mid to end of the 19th century that you were an atheist. Cultured people were doing it, whereas before that, all cultured people, it was part of being a proper member of society to not be an atheist, but to claim that you believe in God. The French did it. The French Revolution went a long way towards ushering that era out by becoming officially, essentially atheist or worshiping. They wouldn't claim they were atheists. They would claim they worshipped reason with a capital R. But essentially, but they outlawed all religion, and it wasn't being atheist was cool then. And in England, it took them another 60 years before that they onboarded that idea. But so the Brad Lafittes were the first sort of formal society of atheists in England.
My note in my book is Charles Bradlaugh was an English political activist and atheist. He founded the National Secular Society in 1866. I guess Bradlaughites were people who thought he was really cool.
Yep. I like how Chesterton calls them the last religious men. In other words,
Yeah.
the last men who cared about God, he says. In other words, they cared about him because they were so rampant in their desire to deny him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the he's going to go on about this a little bit more, about this shift from considering what was involved in this shift away from ideas of universal truth to ideas of that the really interesting thing to talk about is particulars that don't matter, not universal truths that do. That's been turned on its head.
So then a heresiarch.
Yeah, a heresiarch is just the father of a heresy. Yeah, a heresiarch is the father of a heresy. So, so one of the most famous, maybe the most famous heresy in Christianity's history is the Arian heresy. It was so.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was the Rings of Power.
That would be of the 21st century, but back in the 4th century, there's a man called Arius who believed that Jesus wasn't God. He was only man. He was an enlightened man who was inspired by God. He wasn't God himself, and his view became so popular that at one point it's estimated that there were more Arian heretics than there were actual Orthodox Christians in Christianity. More people thought that Christ wasn't God. Well, eventually that shifted, but Arius would be the heresiarch. He's the guy. Martin Luther, in a Catholic perspective, Martin Luther is a heresiarch because he founded Lutheranism, which is a heresy in our view. So which just means that he's wrong about theology. So that's that. Yeah, that's the heresiarch is the top job. It's the 6-figure salary of the theological world.
All right, let's keep her going. We got 2 more paragraphs for this episode.
But there are some people, nevertheless, and I am one of them, who think that the most practical and important thing about a man is still his view of the universe. We think that for a landlady considering a lodger, it is important to know his income, but still more important to know his philosophy. We think that for a general about to fight an enemy, it is important to know the enemy's numbers, but still more important to know the enemy's philosophy. We think the question is not whether the theory of the cosmos affects matters, but whether in the long run anything else affects them. In the 15th century, men cross-examined and tormented a man because he preached some immoral attitude. In the 19th century, we feted and flattered Oscar Wilde because he preached such an attitude, and then broke his heart in penal servitude because he carried it out. It may be a question which of the 2 methods was the more cruel. There can be no kind of question which was the more ludicrous. The age of the Inquisition has not at least the disgrace of having produced a society which made an idol of the very same man for preaching the very same things which it made him a convict for practicing.
All right, deep dive on Oscar Wilde. Go.
All right, Oscar Wilde, author, poet, playwright from the middle of the 19th century, and he, importance of being earnest, probably is one of his best works, and he was famously homosexual and talked about it and wrote poems about it, and he was celebrated in English society as something of a curiosity and an interesting guy because of that. And then when he was caught being a homosexual, which was against the law, he was punished for it and died very shortly thereafter, and imprisoned and etc. So I love these comparisons from Chesterton because each of them is really important. I'll finish with Oscar Wilde, but the first one, we think that for a landlady considering a lodger, it is important to know his income, but still more important to know his philosophy. Why is that? Because if you know his income, you know whether he can afford the property. But if you know his philosophy, you know whether he's going to believe in private property and trash your place or cheat you, which is
Right.
the more important thing. For a general to fight an enemy, it's important to know the enemy's numbers, but still more important to know the enemy's philosophy. Because if you know his philosophy, you might be able to avoid the war altogether, or end it quickly, or not, either not have a war or beat him with his philosophy if you need to. So it's the higher thing. And then finally, that comparison between Oscar Wilde and the Inquisition is fantastic because of the hypocrisy. Where in the 19th century, he's saying we still think that things are wrong sometimes, but we're hypocritical about them. And isn't that more ludicrous, at least, maybe worse than at least at least in the Inquisition, you knew if you were going to if a thing was going to send you to the stake or not. And people didn't bet and flatter you, as he says of Oscar. They did of Oscar Wilde.
Interesting.
Yeah,
taking that in.
Yeah. Oscar Wilde was quite a character. Have you ever read The Importance of Being Earnest?
No, I've read the one that was written by Jim Varney, but that's different. That was his autobiography.
Right.
So that was a stupid joke. That's the guy that plays Ernest on TV.
Ernest
P. Worrell. Jim Varney.
All righty. Sorry, you got me. You got me. I was.
I have not read Oscar Wilde.
It is a great play.
Will it make me gay if I read it?
Slightly, maybe, but it's funny, man. That play is funny.
Worth it.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, it's worth it.
All right, let's take it home, Chesterton.
Now, in our time, philosophy or religion, our theory, that is, about ultimate things, has been driven out more or less simultaneously from two fields which it used to occupy: general ideals used to dominate literature. They have been driven out by the cry of art for art's sake, general ideals used to dominate politics. They have been driven out by the cry of efficiency, which may roughly be translated as politics for politics' sake. Persistently for the last 20 years, the ideals of order or liberty have dwindled in our books. The ambitions of wit and eloquence have dwindled in our parliaments. Literature has purposely become less political. Politics have purposely become less literary. General theories of the relation of things have thus been extruded from both. And we are in a position to ask, what have we gained or lost by this extrusion? Is literature better? Is politics better for having discarded the moralist and the philosopher?
Be continued.
So what do you think about that?
Continued.
I'm sorry. There's that Chesterton delay.
All right. So I was just going to say that art for art's sake. We had a discussion at the Chestertonians last week about art. So he says that general ideals used to dominate literature, and then they have been driven out by the cry art for art's sake. He's not just, of course, talking about visual arts. He's talking about art as in literary arts and anything. The fine arts would be included in that too. But do you think what do you think he's criticizing about art for art's sake? Because it sounds like when you hear art for art's sake, that sounds like an ideal, right?
Just doing art because art's great.
Right.
Having a philosophy of what art even is and why are we creating it? I mean, I think it's tough because if you're an artist like I am, I mean, you do kind of start out doing it just because you like it. But yeah, those questions start to creep in, like, well, what's the point of it? And also then I always struggle with that because I kind of built a foundation out of comics and things that I now kind of look down on as a little bit fallen, and I mean, very fallen. But if I could would I go back and tell my younger self, like, hey, you should learn really good art. Don't learn how to, make dark, violent comics. But I don't know. I trust the Lord with some of these things, but I became who I was through whatever, and but yeah, these questions do fascinate me. Art for art's sake.
Right. Now, historically, that cry, art for art's sake, that was used it sounds like an ideal itself. Chesterton's pointing out that it was used to drive out general ideals out of art.
Mm.
The general ideals.
Oh, so they're saying, yeah, just do art because it's fun. Just do art for art's
Exactly.
sake.
Yeah, just do it because
Don't
you
try
feel
to
like
make a
doing.
point, right?
And what they were doing was something they were actually clever. That cry from the 19th century, late 18th, 19th century, which was they were using a philosophical principle against the idea of general ideal. So the philosophical principle was that art is good, that the things that are best in life are good for their own sake, and they aren't good because they help you do something else. So it doesn't mean that those are the things that are best. Now, it doesn't mean that things that help you do something else aren't good. They can be good, but they aren't the best things. The best things are good to do for their own sake. So the studying, the creation of art, the studying of philosophy, the worship of God, a variety of things like this were the seeking after of knowledge. You can seek after knowledge because you want to fix your car, or you can seek after knowledge because you just want to understand the way the universe is, and it's not going to help you with any practical thing. And those are the things that are worth doing for their own sake. That's the ancient idea. That's the medieval classics idea. And so the artists of this late 18th and 19th century were using that against, to rebel against it. Now, to be fair, for their sake, art had become kind of commoditized, and it was people were often stuck painting portraits of fat rich people for much of their life because that's what paid the bills, and so they were rebelling against that. With the art, that they were trying to say, art is worth it for its own sake. It doesn't have to be just for the filthy lucre that you're doing it for. But it was a kind of dodge. It was using the language of the past, because what they did was they swung the pendulum all the way to the other extreme, and they started saying things like, well, there doesn't have to be meaning in it. No one can judge my art. There's no objective standards or ideals that you can use to say my art's worse than another piece of art. It's just all good for its own sake. It's just, and I, as the artist, I'm the only judge of whether it's any good. And that's they took it to that other extreme that I think Chesterton is pointing out. That's the abandonment of the general ideals of objectivity in art that used to be the guiding principles. Same thing in politics. Politics used to be for the good of the state. We used to have statesmen. Now all we have is politicians who are almost to a man or a woman nakedly self-serving, and will say and do whatever they think will get them elected, with or play to their base. And we defend it. We say that's the way it's designed. You're supposed to play to your base. You're supposed to be efficient. You're supposed to do the practical thing, play politics, be Machiavellian. So that's he's complaining. Chesterton's pointing out, well, is it better? have we gotten better by doing this? By removing the high ideals from art and politics? Has it become better? Because I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly.
And I kind of agree with that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we want to have our regular at the end of each episode. Who did Chesterton roast this week? Now, I don't know that he roasted he brought up names, but I don't know that he roasted them. I think it was more like he was giving a preview of who he's going to roast, like Wells and Hegel.
Right.
And Shaw.
Yeah. He comes close to well, he doesn't roast Descartes or Hegel. He just, but he kind of roasts Bernard Shaw. He points out that Shaw is taking down the idea of, or trying to take down the idea of general truths by saying that the only general truth is there is no general truth.
The golden rule.
Yep, his golden rule comment.
Yeah, he owned him with his own words.
Nice. Boom, roasted.
Yes.
I want that every time. Every time I want it. It'll be interesting to see if he does it differently each time.
Another episode down the crapper.
That's right. So let's bring these. So next week we're going back to the second half of this. Now, the whole reason I put this chapter into my book is because of the last paragraph. The last paragraph is kind of like Chesterton's gate. This is Chesterton's lamppost. And oddly, both of these two concepts are from more obscure Chesterton books that not many people talk about. But that's why I got them in there. They're in the book because these are two of the greatest sort of illustrations of Chesterton's. So don't miss Chesterton's Lamppost next week. And we're going through Chesterton's Gateway, my book. We're going to get all the way through it. We're probably going to skip the Orthodoxy chapters because I think probably next we'll do Orthodoxy. But my goal for this podcast is once we've really gotten a bunch of these done, you could be reading your Chesterton, whatever chapter you're on, you'd be like, I need more thought. I need to dive into this a little deeper. And you just look up the episode on our podcast. And Mike will help you. Mike will help you out.
I need to go to sleep to this episode.
Yeah. So if you need something to sleep to,
I'm an insomniac, and I need someone to put me to sleep.
Except for next episode, because I got death metal Chesterton music for you. But
really,
right now, we're going back.
Tremendous trifles all piled up in a box. But if someone...
Chesterton's Gateway is produced by Ethan, Nicolle and Michael Grumbine. It is based on the book of the same name, which can be found on that capitalist monstrosity Amazon.com. Send questions and comments to GKCinfo at axecop.com, at least until we get our own domain. Goodbye.
All right, there it is.
Bye, freeloaders.
Joining us.
I love Chesterton. Hallelujah, I got the red, white, and blue. You know what else? I got my lip packed with you. You know it's the best, but can you guess what's even bester, son? I got G.K. Chesterton.